Ladies and gentlemen, this is Gaming.com video. Let us discuss multiplayer. Specifically, this is being brought up because the PlayStation 4 exclusive, The Order 1886, will not feature a multiplayer mode. This has been confirmed by the game's developers. They've said, and I quote, "Third-person single-player action game is what they're describing the game to be." And what I've noticed is some websites and some people have already started to comment, why hasn't it got a multiplayer mode, and try to make it like a kind of a big story. And am I the only one? And of course, that's a silly question because I'm certainly not. But I just want to know your opinions on this because personally, from the perspective of someone who, yes, does enjoy multiplayer games, right? There's no doubt, certain times, certain games, definitely much better with other people. They just are. But on the other hand, I don't really like multiplayer additions to what I consider to be single-player games. For example, let's say we're talking about Tomb Raider, the remake, of course. Now, that does feature a multiplayer mode, but I've got to tell you, I just really didn't get into it. I tried it a little bit on the PC, barely touched it, couldn't get into it. Why? Because, I bought the game specifically for the single player, and that's to me where I noticed a lot of the development time and effort went. And so it should. It's a single player story driven game. That's the reason I bought it. And I don't really like this whole notion that a lot of people have that, or even developers try to add in that, if we put in the multiplayer mode, that's going to add life to the game. That's going to be the reason that people, continue to play it, and don't trade it in, or, maybe it's an additional reason to buy it. And I've got to say, I don't personally, if anything, multiplayer on certain games actually puts me off of it. Tomb Raider, I've heard mixed things about the online. Some people absolutely, they think it's pretty good. Obviously, there was some DLC that was multiplayer orientated. But generally speaking, from what I've heard from others, I certainly didn't like it. But of course, my opinion is certainly by no means law, even though it should be. Just kidding. To a lot of people, they just didn't like it that much. It was okay. It was maybe a small diversion. They maybe tried for half an hour, but ultimately the focus wasn't, oh, you know what I want to do when I buy Tomb Raider? I want to play online and kill some dudes. No, the purpose was to, experience the epic storyline that Crystal Dynamics had managed to weave together. And same thing for The Order. Okay, it could be cool to maybe go online with some steampunk-based weapons, but at the same time, there are so many multiplayer-focused titles that a lot of the time you don't really feel that they offer anything new. A lot of the time, even gameplay now, okay, there is some variation, but the real reason you play it, at least in my opinion, these type of games, is the storyline, the locations, the characters, just the way that the game is actually put together, and enjoying the narrative that the developers have managed to weave. And I understand that some people will argue, well, you know what? Why can't we have our cake and eat it? Why can't the developers create a multiplayer mode for the game? And here's the problem with that, and it's certainly by no means a complete story, but for the most part, a developer only has a finite amount of resources. That would be both money, time to create the game, and, of course, money. So the problem is, when you're basically trying to work on multiplayer modes as well as a single-player good game, and more to the point, get a good balance in the multiplayer modes. And that's kind of the key, because if it's a completely unbalanced piece of crap, who wants to play it? I understand that, yes, you can release patches upon patches, but it's not really the best way to design a game. On the other hand, multiplayer DLC maybe later on down the line, that could be a possibility. And going back to the Tomb Raider references that I mentioned earlier on, you may remember that there are pieces of DLC which are multiplayer orientated. And I always said, even during the Steam sale where I recommended people buy the game on the PC, it was ludicrously cheap. I didn't understand their logic and reasoning for not creating more single player DLC for that. Imagine even reimagining some of the levels, for example, in Tomb Raider 1 and 2 and possibly 3. And I'm not necessarily saying, put, I don't know, a 5-hour campaign together, but, a couple of hour gameplay sections. Just people would be willing to pay, $5 for. I think that would have been a really awesome idea, and I honestly think that would have made a hell of a lot of a hell of a lot of money there. I honestly know people who've completed the entire campaign and it's like, I want more. Especially as one of the big criticisms for Tomb Raider was that, they wanted more puzzles. And of course, there was a piece of DLC available for Tomb Raider, Tomb of the Lost Adventurer, available. I'm just telling you guys, the British pound price is currently $1.49 on Steam, which is a pretty good price. However, it's also a very short piece of content. I don't exactly know the length. It's not like I've timed it, but maybe 15 minutes, 30 minutes if you're literally exploring every single nook and cranny, which I personally think is a bit of a shame. But that's just my personal opinion. So, as I said, this isn't necessarily defending the Order because it's, the Order, and I have, some love for the game. I think it looks pretty cool from the little bit of information that we know about it, but more just my thoughts and opinions on multiplayer in single-player titles in general. As I said, I'm not saying that it can't work. I'm not saying that sometimes it can't add a little bit of addition, but I certainly don't think the absence of multiplayer is a negative for a game. I personally feel that it's actually sometimes a very big positive because to me it's a good indication the developers are putting even more resources into a good in-depth storyline. As I said, that's just my personal opinions on this. I'm curious to what you guys and girls, of course, would make of this situation. So anyway, I'm going to let you go. So I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.